This week, for the choice article, I am going to be recording Blood, Smoke, and Freedom, starting on page 8 in your Week 1 magazine, which is the one with the dog on front. You're welcome to read any article you want, but if you would like an article read to you, I'm going to be reading this one. Joseph Plum Martin was still a boy when he joined the American Revolution. Could he survive his first battle? Boom, boom, boom! Explosions shook the ground. Smoke filled the air. 15-year-old Joseph Plum Martin was lying in the dirt, trying to stay alive. It was August 27th, 1776. America and England were fighting one of the first big battles of the Revolutionary War in Brooklyn, New York. Joseph had begged his family to let him join the American army. He thought being a soldier would be an exciting adventure, and he was sure America would win. But now Joseph knew that the Americans were doomed. Hundreds of soldiers were dead. The cries of injured men rose up into the sky. It seemed that Joseph had two choices: surrender or die. The Pause and Think says, how was the war different from what Joseph expected? Down at the bottom, you've got some vocabulary words. First one is surrender, to give up or stop fighting because you know you won't win. Colony, an area that is controlled by a separate and often faraway country. Smoldered, burned slowly without flames, but usually with smoke. Bustling, having a lot of busy activity. Coped, dealt with a problem. Moving on to page 10. A New World. Joseph was born in 1760. The United States wasn't a country yet. America was mostly wilderness except for a strip of land along the East Coast. The land was ruled by England and divided into 13 areas, or colonies. Joseph lived in the colony of Connecticut. Hundreds of thousands of people had come to the colonies from England and other parts of Europe. In their old countries, these people had few choices about their religion, their jobs, or even their friends. America promised a different kind of life. In the colonies, people still had to follow some of England's rules, but they had more freedom. That's why people risked everything, even death, to get there. Pause and think. Why did people come to the colonies? Trouble brewing. Not everyone in the colonies had a good life. Hundreds of thousands of Native American people were killed. They died of diseases or in fights over land. At the same time, African people were dragged to America in chains. They were forced to become slaves. But for people like Joseph's family, white and free, life was better than almost anywhere in the world. And soon, many Americans began to imagine an even better life. These people were angry at England. They wanted more say over how laws were made in the colonies. America's anger toward England smoldered like a fire. And then, in April 1775, that anger exploded into war. The revolution had begun. Americans were fighting for their freedom. Pause and think. Who had a good life in the colonies? Who did not? Getting ready to fight. At first, the thought of fighting scared Joseph, but his courage and excitement grew. In June 1776, he joined the American Army and sailed to New York. This big, bustling city had been turned into an American army camp. I was now what I had long wished to be, he later wrote, a soldier. But Joseph really wasn't a soldier yet. and neither were most of the nearly 20,000 members of the American Army. Some could barely fire a gun. All summer, General George Washington struggled to turn this group into strong fighters. Joseph didn't complain about shooting practice or endless marching. He choked down meals of wormy biscuits and flavorless meat. He coped with the summer heat and the stink of garbage. Joseph was just excited to be a soldier. Pause and think. Why did Joseph spend the summer at an army camp? Surprise attack. Meanwhile, the British were planning a huge attack on New York. They sailed ships packed with weapons. Joseph could see the British soldiers, called redcoats, on the ships. They were hungry for blood and ready to strike. Then, early one morning at the end of August, it happened. More than 15,000 redcoats arrived on the shores of Brooklyn, a village across the river from New York City. The American soldiers were caught by surprise. Washington rushed to send more men to Brooklyn. Joseph was one of them. When he got there, he saw a scene of death and destruction. He and other soldiers tried to stop the British from reaching American forts, but the British forces were too powerful. Hundreds of American soldiers were killed or injured. Pause and think. Why did Washington send more men to Brooklyn? Secret escape. As the British closed in, General Washington came up with a bold plan. He would sneak his army out of Brooklyn during the night. He sent a message, "We need boats in Brooklyn now." Thousands of soldiers were able to escape in the dark. This included Joseph. In the morning, the British attacked the American forts. They were shocked to find them empty. The Americans lost the Battle of Brooklyn, but their army survived and kept fighting. The American Revolution lasted for 8 years. Towns were burned down. Thousands of soldiers were killed. But in 1783, the war finally ended. America had won. Joseph fought for the rest of the war. He later moved to Maine, married, and raised children. He never forgot the terrors of the war, but he was proud that he helped America win its freedom. Pause and think. How long did the American Revolution last? Who won? What was it like to live in 1776? Here are a few of the ways life was different in Joseph's day. Kids loved eel pie. These slimy, snake-like fish baked into pie were an American favorite. Schools were just one room. A single teacher taught children of all ages together. There was no toilet paper. People used corn cobs to clean themselves. Ouch. I'm going to go back over to the map real quick, just to kind of give you an idea of what it is. I'm going to zoom in on it a little bit. So this shows the early days of America. Most of the U.S. didn't exist in 1776. There were only 13 colonies, which were still ruled by England. You've got all your colonies here. And then this little inset is in this area of New York where the Battle of Brooklyn took place from August 27th through 30th, 1776. You can see that the blue spots represent the American troops and the red spots, or these kind of like orangish spots, represent the British troops. And the British ships would have been out here. And then over here is Manhattan, where New York City actually exists. Brooklyn nowadays is one of the 5 boroughs of New York. I'm going to go back up to where I was, and we're going to move to page 12. On page 12 is where we have our activity for this article. So you've just read Blood, Smoke, and Freedom. We've got here a picture of George Washington, who of course was the general of the American Army and was elected to be our first president. So this activity asks us to use text evidence or details from the article to answer the questions below. The first question is done for you. Why did the Revolutionary War begin? And all of these give you a little bit of a hint that tells you which subheading to look at. Many Americans were angry at England and wanted to fight for their freedom. So question number 2 asks you, what was life like at the American Army camp? So for this answer, you're going to, the hint is to look for the answer in the section, getting ready to fight. Then number 3, what did Joseph see during the Battle of Brooklyn? What did he hear? Your hint for this is you're going to look for the answers in the first section and surprise attack. So that's giving you 2 different sections to look for. And then what big change happened as a result of America winning the war? And you're going to look for the answer for that in the section Secret Escape. And there we go. So if you need help with anything else, please let me know.